Maria, and welcome to SC Global News. From the historic moment Catholics around the world have been waiting for, the conclave to elect the 267th Pope will begin on May 7th, to Wisconsin becoming the second state in the US to designate May 1st as St. Joseph the Worker Day. We have many stories to cover. The Catholic Church stands on threshold of a historic moment as the conclave to elect the 267th Pope begins on May 7th. Cardinal electors from around the world will gather in the Sistine Chapel, where they will be sequestered until a new pontiff is chosen. As the world watches with anticipation, centuries-old traditions will guide the solemn process of selecting the successor of Saint Peter.
The conclave to elect the 266th successor of St. Peter will begin on Wednesday, May 7th. The announcement was made following the 5th General Congregation of the College of Cardinals held on Monday morning in the Vatican Synod Hall. The conclave will take place inside the Sistine Chapel, where the cardinal electors will be sequestered for the duration of the election. Prior to the start of the conclave, a solemn Eucharistic celebration, the Pro Eligendo Papa Mass, will be held, attended by cardinal electors. In the afternoon, the cardinals will process to the Sistine Chapel to officially begin the conclave. Once the Master of Pontifical Liturgical Celebrations, Archbishop Diego Giovanni Ravelli, proclaims extra omnis, all individuals not participating in the conclave must leave the Sistine Chapel. The first round of voting will take place that same day. On subsequent days, 4 rounds of voting will occur, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. A 2/3 majority is required for the valid election of a new pope. However, if the conclave becomes prolonged without a result, the cardinals may decide by a simple majority to change the voting procedure as permitted by current norms. When a pope is elected, white smoke will rise from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, signaling to the world that a new pontiff has been chosen. In 2013, the College of Cardinal Electors took a little more than a day to elect Jorge Mario Bergoglio as the successor to Pope Benedict XVI. The conclave that elected Pope Benedict XVI in 2005 lasted 2 days. The longest conclave in history was the one that elected Pope Gregory X, which began in 1268 and lasted nearly 3 years. Afterward, Pope Gregory X codified the rules governing papal elections, a system that has been adapted over time to meet contemporary needs.
In a private conversation at his Vatican residence, Pope Francis told Cardinal Rolandas Macricus that the Virgin Mary has asked him to prepare his tomb at St. Mary Major Basilica, although he had initially planned to be buried at St. Peter's Basilica. This revelation led him to choose the historic Marian sanctuary instead. On April 26th, he was laid to rest at St. Mary Major, becoming the first pope in over a century to be buried outside the Vatican.
Pope Francis's body was laid to rest in St. Mary Major Basilica, one of the 4 major papal basilicas of Rome, during a private ceremony on Saturday, April 26th. He was interred in a niche adjacent to the Pauline Chapel, which houses the 4th century Byzantine icon of Mary, Salus Populi Romani. At a press conference on April 25th, the day before the late Pope's funeral, Cardinal Rolandas Macricus, coadjutor archpriest of St. Mary Major, revealed that Pope Francis had not initially planned to be buried in the historic Marian sanctuary. In 2022, while discussing a remodeling project at the Basilica, Cardinal Macricus asked the Pope if he wished to be buried there, given his deep devotion to Salus Populi Romani. At the time, Pope Francis declined, noting that popes are traditionally buried in St. Peter's Basilica. However, a week later, the Pope summoned Cardinal Macricus to his Vatican residence and shared a change of heart, saying, quote, "The Virgin Mary told me, prepare the tomb," end quote. Thus, Pope Francis came to be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica, the first Marian sanctuary in the Western world. Pope Francis is the 8th Pope to be buried at St. Mary Major and the first Pope to be buried outside the Vatican in over 120 years. Throughout his papacy, he visited the Basilica and the icon of Salus Populi Romani before and after each of his 47 international trips, as well as on significant occasions during his pontificate. The Basilica is also notable as the place where Saint Ignatius of Loyola, founder of the Jesuit order, celebrated his first Mass in 1538, making it a fitting final resting place for the first Jesuit pope.
Pope Francis was laid to rest at St. Mary Major Basilica on April 26, 2025 and is honored with a single white rose placed on his tomb. This simple yet profound gesture symbolizes his deep devotion to Saint Therese of Lisieux, from whom he frequently sought intercession, often asking for roses as a sign of her presence. The white rose serves as a touching tribute to the late Pope's enduring love and spiritual bond with the saint.
Pope Francis, the 266th Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, was laid to rest on April 26, 2025 in the Basilica of St. Mary Major. Thousands of faithful gathered to pay their final respects to their beloved Pope. Images released by the Vatican media reveal a simple yet profound tomb, a marble slab inscribed with Franciscus, the Latin form of his name, and a pectoral cross mounted on the wall above it. Adorning the tomb is a single white rose, a tribute to his deep spiritual connection with Saint Therese of Lisieux. Pope Francis frequently expressed his devotion to Saint Therese, often referring to her in interviews and homilies. He shared that he would regularly ask for her intercession and request a sign in the form of a rose. This tradition is rooted in a promise attributed to Saint Therese, who will send down a shower of roses from the heavens and will spend her heaven doing good upon earth. Many believe that receiving a rose after praying to Saint Therese as a sign of her favor. In fact, shortly after his hospital discharge, Pope Francis reportedly received a white rose from Lisieux, according to the Holy See official's media outlet, which the Pope kept it on a nightstand next to his bed. In a 2015 interview, Pope Francis affirmed his trust in the saint's intercession. He said that he had a habit, when unsure of a situation, of asking Saint Therese of the child Jesus to take care of it and to send him a rose as a sign, and at times she does, but in odd ways, he added. To the late Pope, Saint Therese was more than a saint. She was a faithful friend and a model of spiritual leadership. The white rose on his tomb now stands as a testament to that bond, embodying his enduring love, trust, and devotion to the little flower of God.
It has been 25 years since Saint John Paul II declared the second Sunday of Easter as Divine Mercy Sunday during the canonization of Saint Faustina Kowalska. This declaration was seen as a fulfillment of a divine mission first entrusted to Saint Faustina, the Polish nun who received profound mystical visions of Jesus Christ and was called to spread his message of mercy to the world. When Pope John Paul II entrusted the world to divine mercy, he expressed a deep hope that the world would hear and embrace the message that God is merciful.
On Sunday, April 27, the Catholic world celebrated Divine Mercy Sunday, a feast deeply rooted in the legacy of Pope Saint John Paul II. It was on April 30, 2000, during the canonization of Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska, the Pope John Paul II officially declared the second Sunday of Easter as Divine Mercy Sunday. 2 years later, the Pope further deepened this devotion by entrusting the world to divine mercy during the consecration of the International Shrine of Divine Mercy in Lagivniki, Poland. Standing before the image of Divine Mercy, Pope John Paul II declared, quote, "I wish solemnly to entrust the world to divine mercy. I do so with the burning desire that message of God's merciful love proclaimed here through Saint Faustina may be made known to all peoples of the earth and fill their hearts with hope." End quote. This act was seen as a fulfillment of a divine mission first entrusted to Saint Faustina, a Polish nun who experienced profound mystical visions of Jesus Christ. In these visions, Jesus asked her to spread the message of his infinite love and mercy and to help establish Divine Mercy Sunday on the Sunday following Easter, offering the world a path to salvation. Saint Faustina recorded her visions in a diary, which later became the foundation of Divine Mercy devotion. Pope John Paul II first encountered Saint Faustina's revelations as a young seminarian in Kharkov in 1940. Later, as an Archbishop of Krakow, he led efforts to present Faustina's cause to the congregation for the cause of saints, defending the authenticity of her mystical experiences, especially when they were questioned in Rome. On November 30, 1980, Pope John Paul II published her second encyclical, Rich in Mercy. During Saint Faustina's beatification on April 18, 1993, the Pope expressed his joy in witnessing the growing global devotion to divine mercy. When he entrusted the world to divine mercy, Saint Pope John Paul II expressed a deep hope that the world would hear and embrace the message that God is merciful and that this mercy is a source of hope for all humanity.
In a historic first, the Philippines has consecrated itself entirely to Jesus through divine mercy. The nationwide act of faith took place during Holy Masses celebrated across the country on April 27, Divine Mercy Sunday. This unprecedented consecration marks a powerful response of hope and trust amid many challenges facing the Filipino people and the world today.
On April 27th, Divine Mercy Sunday, the Philippines became the first nation to consecrate itself entirely to Jesus through divine mercy. The consecration took place across the country during Holy Mass on the second Sunday of Easter. Although the continent of Africa was consecrated to Divine Mercy during the Pan-African Congress on Divine Mercy Sunday in 2016, the Philippines is the first individual nation to do so. The Feast of Divine Mercy was officially instituted in the year 2000 on the occasion of the canonization of Saint Faustina Kowalska, a Polish cloistered nun also called the Apostle of Divine Mercy. It is based on the revelations she received from Jesus, who promised that on that day, the very depths of his tender mercy are open. Sister Faustina records the words of Jesus, quote, "I pour out a whole ocean of graces upon those souls who approach the fount of my mercy. The soul that will go to confession and receive Holy Communion shall obtain complete forgiveness of sins and punishment." End quote. The decision to consecrate the island nation was publicized by Cardinal Pablo Virgilio David, President of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, on April 11th. This decision followed a letter from Father James Cervantes of the Marians of the Immaculate Conception, urging church leaders to commit the nation to divine mercy. Father Cervantes, writing for Inquirer Plus, stated that the inspiration came from a woman who told him that the Lord had placed it in her heart to call for a national consecration to divine mercy in the Philippines. He also noted that countries which have made consecrations in the past have received many graces. He cited the revival and preservation of faith in Ecuador and Portugal, which consecrated themselves to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, respectively. To ensure that the act of consecration would not become mere lip service, Father Cervantes led Filipinos through a 14-day preparation via the Facebook page of Marian Helpers Philippines. Cardinal David also emphasized the importance of this consecration, stating that it was intended as a collective response of faith and hope in the face of many grave challenges confronting our people and the world today. He added, quote, "This nationwide consecration will be a profound expression of our trust in the divine mercy, a trust that remains our final refuge in these times of uncertainty and trial." End quote. On Divine Mercy Sunday, over 57,000 pilgrims from across Asia arrived at the Archdiocesan Shrine of Divine Mercy in Misamis Oriental, Philippines, to take part in the annual Divine Mercy celebration. During Holy Mass, Archbishop Charles John Brown, Apostolic Nuncio to the Philippines, recited the prayers of consecration of the Philippines to divine mercy, a moment that will remain etched in the history of the only Christian country in Asia.
Wisconsin becomes the second state in US to honor St. Joseph following an unsuccessful attempt the previous year. The state legislature has officially designated May 1st as St. Joseph the Worker Day, recognizing the patron saint of workers. The Senate Joint Resolution 16 was passed on April 22, 2025.
The Wisconsin State Legislature has officially designated May 1st as St. Joseph the Worker Day in Wisconsin, honoring the patron saint of workers. The Senate Joint Resolution 16 was passed on April 22, 2025, after a failed attempt last year. Senator Corey Tomczyk stated, quote, "This resolution honors the resilience, dedication, and tireless spirit of our workforce, reflecting the timeless virtues of St. Joseph that guide workers in their daily endeavors. By establishing this day, we celebrate the dignity of labor, foster unity and purpose among our workers." End quote. Father Donald H. Calloway, whose best-selling book Consecration to Saint Joseph: The Wonders of Our Spiritual Father ignited devotion to Saint Joseph around the world, applauded Louisiana and Wisconsin for passing the resolution and expressed hope that other states would initiate Mayfair celebrations in their schools, workplaces, and communities. Louisiana became the first state to unanimously establish Mayfest as Saint Joseph the Worker Day in 2021. Every year, Louisiana celebrates the day with a prayer breakfast hosted by Senator Fred Mills with over 250 workers, faith leaders, and community members to honor laborers. To mark the 150th anniversary of Blessed Pope Pius IX's declaration of Saint Joseph as the patron of the Universal Church, Pope Francis proclaimed a special Year of Saint Joseph from December 8, 2020 to December 8, 2021.
That's all for today. Until we meet again, God bless and thank you.